Today on Locked On Red Wings, we bring on the radio voice of the Detroit Red Wings, Ken Kal, to help us preview the season and preview the home opener against the Montreal Canadiens.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts.
BetOnline.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I am a podcast producer for WWJ News Radio, while Scotty is a freelance journalist for the Detroit News, as well as the host of Locked On Tigers. And today, Scotty, we have probably our most exciting guest that we've had in quite some time in the radio play-by-play voice of the Detroit Red Wings, Ken Kal. You can hear his voice on 97.1 The Ticket. You can hear that voice tonight, by the time you're listening to this, on 97.1 The Ticket, as he'll be in the booth calling the home opener against the Montreal Canadiens. Ken, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing okay, Scotty and Brian, and just getting ready for the opener. It's going to be a lot of fun. Two original six teams battling it out. It's a great day for the fans in Detroit. You know, going on the red carpet, the players will be there, and I hope the fans get out there early, snap some pictures. But opening day, like baseball, opening night in hockey is just equally as fun, and hopefully this will be a good year for the Red Wings.
Well, it certainly should be a better year than the years past with all the signings that they made in free agency. Obviously, the additions of Ben Sherratt. You have the addition of Andrew Kopp, Dominic Kubalik, Perron. You could go down the list of all the acquisitions they made. To really set the stage for the season, though, let's take a step back and look at the preseason that the Red Wings had. They played 8 games. They won some, they lost some, as per usual. What were your main takeaways as like who shined and who do you think could look better from the preseason?
Well, first and foremost, I think if you looked at the goals for and goals against and the goal differential, it came out to about even. And that's a good sign. And I say that because Derek Lalonde came in here and he came into a team that gave up 312 goals last year. And that's just not going to get it done as far as if you want to make the playoffs in the National Hockey League. The Red Wings understand that they have to get better defensively. And that was seen right from the get-go. Now, it's a work in progress, and all the things that Coach Lalonde and his staff have implemented in the preseason and also in Traverse City at training camp, it seems like the players are buying in. And what I mean about that is that the forwards have to play well defensively on the defensive side of the puck. They've got to help out the goaltender, coming back, help out their defenseman, play as a 5-man unit. And I think that's what I was impressed with. It seems like they have a little ways to go to really shut other teams down, but I think they're making progress right off the get-go. So with that said, I'm hoping that as the regular season starts against Montreal, you won't see as many blowouts as you did in the previous year. You'll see a lot of tight games. I think the Red Wings will be playing in a lot of those one-goal hockey games and hopefully be on the winning side. And I've said all along that if you lose 30 games in regulation, you're not going to make the playoffs. So obviously, if you're going to lose, make sure you get it in overtime or in a shootout. That way you get the extra point and you have an opportunity to make the playoffs. But really excited about the youngsters. Obviously, we'll talk a little more about Elmer Soderblom in the future here. But, I think all the guys came into camp in good shape. I thought, they played well at times in the preseason. Other times they still need to work at their game. But for the most part, I thought they competed hard. And again, hopefully they'll go into the regular season against Montreal with fire in their eyes and in their heart as well. And hopefully they'll win some hockey games this year and really make a bid to make the playoffs.
Well, I want to talk about Soderblom. We could just jump right into that. I mean, that was obviously one of the biggest. Him and Edvinsson were probably the two biggest stories of the preseason as far as like youngsters coming up and him making the team. And then, not only making the team, but there was some questions about like, he might get sent down like right away, but he just made it today. And like, he's going to play and not only play, but be one on the third line. It looks like for opening night.
Line.
Yeah. So yeah, huge line. Yes. So just overall thoughts on his preseason, maybe what you expect from him this season. Just what do you like about him?
Well, he's really got soft hands for a big guy. And when you see 6'8" forwards, you don't see too many of them. Most of the time, those guys are playing back on the blue line on defense. A guy like Brett Burns, Zadina Chara, but you don't really see guys like that playing on the wing. And he's not a real physical guy. He'll go into the corners and he'll try to win battles. And he's got a big frame, still has to learn about protecting the puck. But what I really like about him is that, he's pretty gifted for a big guy. And he really has some moves. He uses his long reach to his advantage offensively and defensively. He can poke pucks away from opponents. He's got nice soft hands in close, and he proved he can finish. The goal he scored the other night in the preseason was just a thing of beauty, where Unreal. He walked from the sideboards right out in front, put a backhand behind the goaltender. And, you don't see big guys make plays like that. So as he continues to grow into that big frame and work on his game in front of the net, I think he's really going to be a good player. And right now he's teamed up with Michael Rasmussen, I think Oscar Sundqvist, and those are some pretty big forwards. I like to call them the Redwoods there, the two Redwoods. Rasmussen's a big guy too. He's 6'4", 6'5", something like that. So, as Steve Yzerman keeps drafting players and getting players, it just seems like they're getting really, really big. And maybe that's the blueprint of this Red Wing team down the road, not only up front, but on the blue line, but having a big, solid team.
Well, we definitely know Yzerman loves big players, because if you look at every defenseman he's drafted, I don't think he's drafted a single one that's been under 6 foot in his tenure as general manager thus far. I want to talk too, because obviously if Rasmussen and Veleno and Soderblom are all in, then that means that Zadina and Pius Suter are out. And that is confirmed by Derek Lalonde in the pregame or media availability earlier on Thursday. That is confirmed. They are the healthy scratches in game 1. Now, their situations are a little bit different. Zadina's coming in off of a down year. He did sign a 3-year extension as an RFA. Suter's going into the final year of his contract. When we were talking after free agency started, Scotty and I thought that Suter would slide down to the third line. But as preseason went on, Michael Rasmussen and Veleno showed a lot of promise at that center role. Were you shocked at all when you saw today that Suter and Zadina were going to be healthy scratches in the first game in lieu of Michael Rasmussen and Joe Veleno and a rookie in Elmer Soderblom?
No, not shocked at all. And I say that because you can't dress everybody. And there's going to be certain players along the way that are going to have to sit out just because there's a lot of depth right now. And that's something the Red Wings haven't had in the long run. Trust me, Zadina, he'll be playing his share of games, and it wouldn't surprise me if he dresses against the New Jersey Devils. And again, and Derek Lalonde touched on this with the media too, it's not about who makes the team on opening night. There's going to be injuries down the road. There's going to be players that aren't going to have good starts, that are going to have to maybe go down to Grand Rapids just to find their game. Hopefully that's not going to be an issue, but there always is. And so these players have to be ready to play. And again, this is all about the team. And again, you can't play everybody. There's always going to be a couple of guys that are going to sit out. Not those guys aren't going to be happy because they're all competitors and they want to play. But eventually they're going to have to come in. And when they come in, they're going to have to make the management staff notice them. And it's the same thing with Zadina and everybody else. If you're Verana and you're not playing too well, guess what? If you're not earning your minutes, you're going to sit out and somebody else is going to take your spot. And Zadina could fit in on the second line too. So I guess what I like about it is that over the last several years, the Red Wings had a top line with Larkin, Bertuzzi, and Raymond. And then after that, it kind of dropped off. But, right now you have Andrew Kopp on that second line. Verana's there too. And there's just so much depth right now. And Rasmussen, I thought, made a case last year where he's playing much better. And I thought his preseason was good too. So the Red Wings have some depth right now. And I think that's going to help out the top line. You can't expect them to carry all the offense on this team, but now they've got the depth, and I think that's good for this club. And not only that, but Grand Rapids are going to have some good players too. You look at Berggren down there, Simon Edvinsson, who saw a lot of work in the preseason, won't start the year with the Red Wings, but he's going to get some much needed work down in Grand Rapids to improve his game. And he's on the cusp too. He's one of those guys like Berggren that could come up here in a heartbeat and really contribute. So I'm not concerned about Zadina or Suter, to make a long story short. I just think that they're going to be ready to go when they get in the lineup, and I think they'll be in the lineup soon.
So when we come back, we're going to have just keep on rolling with these questions. We have a plenty of them. But before we can do that, I do got to talk to you guys today about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline. It's where the game starts. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are joined by the radio voice of the Detroit Red Wings, Ken Kal. He's helping us preview the season, preview the first game, the home opener. Scotty, what do you got for Ken here?
Well, I kind of want to talk about Zadina a little bit more, just because it's really easy to, and not, like you covered everything that had to do with, his situation and everything, but specifically when it comes to what you saw out of him in the preseason, there was a lot of fans, at least, that were pretty excited about what they saw out of him and thought that, he was playing with a little explosiveness, maybe looked a little more aggressive, I guess is the word. Just what do you think? Where do you think he stands currently as far as like what he's doing on the ice, and how did you assess his preseason, I guess?
I thought he played well in the games that I saw Zadina play. I thought he competed well. He was good defensively, and it seemed like he was getting more offensive opportunities too, and kind of being a little more creative in the offensive zone, more than I've seen him in the past. When you think of Zadina, you kind of look at Alexander Ovechkin. He likes to shoot the puck from the circle, those one-time slap shots. But in this league, unless you have an over-powerful shot, and he's got a really good shot, but you're not going to score on goaltenders. So I guess what he has to do is he has to be a little more creative in the offensive zone. As I mentioned, I did see that from him in the preseason. Change up his routine a little bit to get scoring chances. And again, improve his overall defensive play. And that's going to keep him in the lineup. The other thing about Zadina is that he was drafted as a goal scorer, and sometimes you have to have roles to play in the National Hockey League. And I truly believe that when he was drafted by Ken Holland, his role on this Red Wing team down the road was to put the puck in the net. And, if that's not working out for you, then obviously you have to do something that's going to keep you up with the big club. And that's your overall defensive play and being maybe a checker as opposed to, an all-out goal scorer, but you have to find a niche some way. So maybe he's in between right now. But then again, he's still young. He's got some experience now playing at the minor league level, at the big league level, and now he's just got to put it all together. But to me, I'd like to see him score more. And if he can put the puck in the back of the net, it's only going to help the Red Wings more as far as winning games.
You did talk a lot too, or you did mention rather in the first segment about guys who sometimes over the course of the season have to go down to get their confidence back up. Well, that happened to Joe Veleno twice last year. Once was to get his confidence back up. Once was during the All-Star game, All-Star week, I believe. They just sent him down there to keep him playing. After he came back, it seemed to Scotty and I like he had found another level. He was playing a lot better with more confidence. Well, coming into the preseason, he has looked fantastic. I believe I heard it on one of the broadcasts as well. He's down 9 pounds, leaner, but still a little bit more muscular. And he looked great. And I was super happy to find out that he would be centering the fourth line in the first game. Like you said, it's fluid. People will get scratched. Pius Suter's going to play hockey games, so I'm sure Joe Veleno will get scratched here or there. But what did you see from Joe Veleno in the preseason as he enters his second full season as a Detroit Red Wing? And what are you looking to get out of him this season, or looking to expect out of him rather?
Well, Joe was a little bit banged up coming out of training camp in Traverse City, so he missed a couple of games off the get-go. But when he did return to the lineup, I thought he really did improve, and I liked what I seen from Joe Veleno. He's a pretty good skater. He's winning battles along the boards. We saw that he still has a pretty good shot. He scored in one of the preseason games. And the thing about Joe now, he's like everybody else. You have to earn your minutes out there. Now he's on a fourth line. Last year they experimented putting him on all the lines, at one point in time, just to see where he'll fit in. But again, just like Zadina, he's going to have to find a way to stay put in the lineup. And that's it's not just by putting points on the board. It's your overall game. And if you're on a fourth line, you're on a checking line, your responsibilities are different than if you're on a scoring line or the first or second line. So the responsibilities the coaches are going to look at is, are you winning faceoffs as a center iceman? How are you playing in the defensive zone? Are you making sure that you trust your other players? I mean, all these little things that go into a hockey game that fans may not notice is what he's under evaluation for. So it's all those little things. Sometimes your best games are the ones you don't put up a lot of points in, and you're just doing all the little things right. So as a center iceman, you have to really be on your toes. You have to win faceoffs. And again, you have to skate 200 feet back and forth and have the ability to shut the other team down too. So that's what I see from Joe Veleno. Now he's probably only going to get 11, 12 minutes of ice time, but when you do get 11 or 12 minutes, you have to make them the best minutes of your game.
I also want to talk about, we kind of touched on a little bit at the beginning, but the biggest storyline in the preseason one was probably Simon Edvinsson. What was your assessment out of like what you saw from him? And obviously he's going to start in Grand Rapids. And I think kind of the general belief is like he could find his way back up here at any amount of time throughout this season. Just what was your, first impression of seeing him play against like other members of, the actual Detroit Red Wings?
Well, I guess you can't really compare him to anybody, but if you compared him to Mo Seider and see what Seider did when he first came in, there's a little bit of a difference right there. I saw good things from Simon Edvinsson. I like the way he moves the puck, but in the National Hockey League, there's plenty more to learn. And he's still not the strongest of guys. He's got to build himself up a little bit. Am I surprised he's playing in Grand Rapids? No, I'm not. I mean, and that's not going to hurt him. I mean, if he played here in Detroit and he's on your fifth and sixth pairing on defense and you're only playing 8 to 10 minutes, you're not really getting full value for him, right? You want him to play as much as he can, learn in all different types of situations. And the only way he's going to play more is if he goes down to Grand Rapids, where he can play maybe 17 to 20 minutes a game. He can play on the power play and the penalty kill and really get his work done. So, it's not easy for anybody that young to come in, especially a defenseman. Guys like Mo Seider are rare. I mean, really rare. Usually it takes a defenseman 5, 6, 7 years to learn how to play like he did when he came in at 19 years old. So, I don't think they're going to rush Simon Edvinsson. They're not going to bring him up here just to put him in the lineup and play on a fifth or sixth pairing. I think they really want him to learn the game and play the way they want him to play and learn and develop and grow. And the only way he's going to do that is by playing more. But with that said, down the road, he's going to be a 1,000-game player in the National Hockey League, I think. I think he's got all the tools. He's big. He can move the puck. He's pretty smart out there. He knows how to defend. Like I said, a big body, good reach. He can play well in front of his goaltender. So he's going to be a Red Wing for a long period of time. Again, you're not going to rush him.
I love to hear that. So we've been talking so much, Ken, about all the young guys on the team and the guys who have been around for a while as well, like Zadina. It's been in his fourth year now. First full season, though, but fourth year overall. I want to talk about the guys they brought in the offseason. We haven't talked at all about the free agent acquisitions or trade acquisitions in Ville Husso's case. I mean, there's a lot of good talent that they brought in. Is there one guy that you've honed in on as like, that's the guy? That's the most exciting guy they acquired this offseason?
Well, I think you have to look at a guy we haven't seen him play in the preseason because he's a little bit banged up, but we'll see him on opening night is Andrew Kopp. To me, he's what the Red Wings want. They want a two-way forward that's going to contribute offensively, not hurt your team defensively. And he had a great playoff series last year with the New York Rangers. So to have him in the lineup, and he's one of those guys that, you can count on. And I think of guys like Anze Kopitar with the Los Angeles Kings, he's like Mr. Consistency. And that's what I see in Andrew Kopp. He's not going to hurt you. He's not going to put up big numbers, but he's going to be a big part of your team. They love him in the locker room. And, he finally gives the Red Wings some depth in the center ice position, which is something that they haven't had. So he's one of the guys. The other guy that I thought played well in the preseason, and he had 30 goals with the Chicago Blackhawks in his rookie year. That's dominant in the league.
Heck yeah.
The guy has an amazing shot, and it wouldn't surprise me if he puts up some great numbers this year. And when I say great numbers, I'm not saying he's going to be a 50-goal scorer, but it's possible that he can get 20, 25 goals. He's in the right position. It's been a long time since the Red Wings have had wingers that are big, strong along the boards, and have a great shot like Dominic Kubalik. So if all goes well, he stays healthy, he could be a big difference maker there. And another guy that, you really haven't noticed him in the preseason, but I think he's going to help out, especially on the power play. He's not flashy anymore. He's 32 years old, but he still can shoot the puck, and that's David Perron. Yeah. And, anytime you get a guy that can fire the puck like he can, all you got to do is get some players that can set him up. So if he's on the power play, he's like Brett Hull. He can get that shot off in a hurry, and he'll surprise a lot of goaltenders. And you have to have good special teams in order to make your way up in the standings in the NHL. And I kind of looked at it last year. I think 9 of the top 10 teams on the power play made the playoffs. Wow. There was only one team that didn't make it, and they weren't in the top 10 on the power play. So if your power play is good and you're over 20%, 22, 23%, you have a good opportunity to win a lot of hockey games and maybe make the playoffs.
David Perron's another one of those guys. You talk about Andrew Kopp's consistency, but David Perron throughout his entire career has been put up incredibly consistent point totals. Yeah. He's almost always been in the 50s or even the 60s as well. He's just been so good in a middle six winger role, especially on the power play. But let's take a look now at the game at hand tonight against the Montreal Canadiens. Montreal has already played one game going into this one against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they won 4-3. Now it's a regular season; it's game one. Don't want to take too many things away, but I mean that's presumably one of the worst teams in the NHL, beating presumably one of the best teams in the NHL. Going into this game where Montreal beat the crap out of you last season, and I think they won. All 3 games against the Detroit Red Wings. So when you're looking at this game and this particular matchup for the home opener, what are you looking at for keys for the Red Wings if they want to secure a victory?
Guys, we were talking about playing in tight games, and you can win some of those hockey games. Doesn't matter what team you're playing. And look at Montreal. They scored a goal, the game-winning goal, with 19 seconds to go in regulation. So they're in that game all the way through. They're giving the Leafs a battle and somehow found a way to get the job done. That's how I see the Red Wings playing this year. Just hanging in there with these teams. Doesn't matter if it's Toronto or if it's Arizona, hanging in there. That's what Montreal did. That Caulfield's a really good hockey player. The Red Wings are going to have to keep a good eye on him when they play him in the opener. And Suzuki's always a good player. He contributed well, played, I think, 21 minutes in the game against the Maple Leafs. But again, like everybody else in the division, they got good on paper. Like the Red Wings on paper look really good. Then you look at Montreal, they've made some acquisitions. They brought in some young talent too. Goalkeeping, hopefully that'll keep the Montreal Canadiens in contention. If not, then they're going to have some trouble. But they're not a bad team. Buffalo's a little bit better. Ottawa's a little bit better now with Giroux and DeBrincat on their team. Goaltending is suspect in their camp. But again, the whole division is really going to be tough. And are the Red Wings going to end up in the top 3? Probably not. But there's going to be 6 or 7 other teams battling for 2 wild card spots. So you have to be able to stay in the hockey games. And again, I've always said this in the opener, you've got to take it to the other team right off the bat. Get the crowd into it. Let them enjoy themselves and make some noise and get the lead in that hockey game, because it's always difficult in the home opener if you trail and try to come back, as opposed to if you can get an early start, take it to the other team, and then shut them down the rest of the way.
Well, you kind of talked about the division there as well, and we can get back to the opening night at the end if we want to, but I want to look at the season as a whole. Like we've talked about all the reasons that this team is presumably better than last year, all the acquisitions that they made, all the additions that have been made. Lalone made some comments earlier this week, like, teams don't just jump up like 20, 25, 26 points in one season. Like it's a process type of thing. We're in arguably, for my money, probably the best division in hockey, like you've mentioned. What do you expect from this team as a whole this season?
Well, that's a good question. And last year, the Wings had 73 points, something like that. And in order to make the playoffs, needed 100. So that means the Red Wings need 12 or 13 more wins and have the same type of season last year to make the playoffs. Is that going to happen? I don't know. I mean, that's why you have to let the season play out. There's always teams that come out of nowhere and grab the division by storm and are tough teams to beat, like the Florida Panthers last year. I don't want to say they came out nowhere. They had talent, but nobody expected them to score as many goals as they scored last year. I think they led the league along with Colorado in the West as far as 7+ goal games over the course of the season. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? That's why you got to play the games. As I mentioned before, I think the Red Wings can steal some points, a few more points than they did a year ago from some of the top teams in the league. And again, that's by playing it close to the vest and really making it tough for other teams to score and shutting down their special teams. So, what you're hoping for, I guess, if you're a Red Wing fan, is that some of the top teams like Tampa, drops a little bit. The Bruins look good in their win over the Washington Capitals the other night, but you hope that they drop a little bit. And maybe the Red Wings can increase their point totals and move up the standings a little bit too. So it's going to be difficult. I'm going to tell you that right now. I think the Red Wings will be better. To get to 100 points or 96 points, I think that's going to be a stretch just because of the fact that you mentioned the division's tough. The whole Eastern Conference is tough. And if you're not going to finish in the top 3, you're battling with 7 other teams that have the same goals as you have. So every game's going to be a battle, and every game's going to be a difference maker.
Yeah, so they finished with 74 points last season. This year, the over-under for them is set through BetOnline is set at 84.5. That's still a pretty big increase. If they were to hit the over, that's an 11-point increase. Do you think that's a realistic goal for them to hit? Now, 90 points, 100 points to make the playoffs, I agree with you, is a bit of a stretch. But do you think that 85 points hitting that over at 84.5 is realistic?
Yeah, I do. I mean, when you think about it, over the course of 7 months, that's what you play, 6.5 months. That's like a win or maybe a win and a half every month, right? So when you look at it that way, it's not a big deal, I guess. So what you have to stay away from are those long losing streaks. And after you lose 2, you got to come back with a point or get a win. And the good teams do that. They nip it in the bud quickly. And they don't have those 6, 7, 8, 9 game losing streaks. That'll just kill you. And that's exactly what happened to the Red Wings last year is, at the first half of the year, they were playing some pretty good hockey. They were within 4 points of the Boston Bruins. And then all of a sudden they just crumbled a little bit and it fell apart. And then you have big, long losing streaks, and then you just take yourself out of contention. So those are the things that you have to stay away from.
Yeah.
I think the only other thing I really have is I just want your impression of Lalonde so far. Like, obviously, first year head coach and everything, and comes from a long line of success over there and the Stevie Y connection and all that. What have you seen from him that you've liked? What have you heard from him that you've liked? Just overall first impression of him.
Well, when you're a head coach, you have to have the players buy into your structure and your system. And so far in talking with Derek Lalonde, he believes that the Red Wings are working hard and they're trying to learn the new system that he's implementing. And they're really paying a lot of attention to detail and trying to get the system down to where, they're going to compete hard and really play it close to the vest and take opportunities away from the opposition. So I like that part. The other part I like is that they got a really good coach in Bob Bugner. I mean, here's a guy that ran the San Jose Sharks and had a really good power or penalty kill rather. And Derek Lalonde talked about that with the media last week about how when he was with Tampa Bay, they copied, I guess, the San Jose penalty kill. And they went from 21st in the league to first overall in a matter of a season. Now, if the Red Wings were able to do that, and let's face it, last year they were 25th or 26th on the penalty kill.
That was
you can get into the top 5. You're going to win some games, man. I'm telling you, that's just how it works. And again, you have your penalty. The special teams play is huge in the National Hockey League, and if you can get yourself in the top 10 in power play and penalty kill, your chances of making the playoffs go way up because you're going to win a lot more hockey games. And sometimes when you're playing 5-on-5 and things aren't going right, you get a couple of power plays and you can score, or you shut down the opposition when they have the power play and you win a close game. That's going to make a big difference. But just going back to your question, Derek seems like he's a really good guy. He's like Jeff Blashill. He's good with the media. The times that I've had a chance to talk to him, he's honest. He's upfront. He tells you like it is. And, I just think he's going to be good behind the bench.
I hope you're right, because Red Wings fans, man, we're chomping at the bit for some real competitive, fun hockey. But before I let you go and we wrap this up, I have one last question for you. I know you're a big Lions fan, Ken. How are you enjoying the Lions season so far?
Well, I'm one of the few guys that I guess didn't buy into the hype. And I said, you
Smart
know
man,
what?
apparently.
No, there's a lot of people watch Hard Knocks, and like hype does not win football games, in my opinion. The Lions are still a ways away talent wise, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And these are just my opinions, my observations. Like to expect this team to go from where they were to a playoff team or to win 9 games. I mean, not in this league. It's a process, and just like the Red Wings, like it doesn't change overnight. And I think you have to just take a step back if you're a Lions fan and just say, you know what, it's going to be rough for the first couple of years. It was under Dan Campbell. He's learning on the job too. But with that said, you have to get better each and every year. And with the Lions, they started out 1-4. We need to see some improvement from them by the end of the year. Going into next year, that's going to give everybody signs that they're making progress. So it's not going to happen overnight. I didn't anticipate them winning 9 games this year. It's not to say they can't do it. Anything can happen. As I mentioned, you got to play the games. But again, you have to see improvement. And what you don't want to see is teams hoping to make an improvement and start going downhill as opposed to going uphill.
Right.
Scotty witnessed 162 games of that over with the Lockdown Tigers this year, hoping to make an improvement and then didn't.
Tough year.
Well,
But
Ken,
you know what? Like everybody else, hey, I'm a Lions fan. I hope one day I get to watch a Super Bowl, and I hope they win it. I was 3 months old when they won their last championship back in 1957. Wow. So I like everybody else, we've waited a long time, and we just certainly hope that they can put things together and hopefully be consistent and be a winner each and every year. And that gives fans a lot of hope when you can go into the season saying, hey, you know what, we've got a good enough team, we're going to make the playoffs, as opposed to, geez, I hope we win 3 or 4 games this year.
Yeah,
Makes a big
absolutely.
difference.
It does. Ken,
or the other thing is hoping that, who are we going to pick in October in the draft next year when the season's over with? Like, nobody wants to do that, right?
No.
You want meaningful
Or
games
Super Bowl.
I've heard mock draft radio already. We're already at a point with the Lions this season that I've been hearing mock drafts get done on the air. So Lions fans are very cyclical in their beliefs. It's excitement for 3 weeks, and then after those 3 weeks pass, and they realize what the team's on their hand, it's like, okay, well, let's look at the draft, and maybe next year. They get to maybe next year before the bye week. It's incredible.
Well, again, we all want instant gratification, right?
Oh, yeah.
We all want, and in the National Football League, the way it's set up is there are teams that go through 2 losing seasons and then all of a sudden turn it around, and that's what I'm hoping for with the Lions is that, they'll draft well the next couple of years and hopefully have a winning team, make the playoffs, and then, get a home game and win that game and then head over to the Super Bowl. So it's just going to take time. You have to be patient. And I know 65 years is a long time to be patient for, but you just hope that sooner or later they get it done the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much, Ken, for coming on and talking to us today. I was very, very appreciative. It was huge. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome, Brian. You're welcome, Scott. And let's do it again sometime. Maybe during the middle of the season, we can lock up again and see where this team is heading. And hopefully it's, they're doing really well. And again, I'm looking forward to it. This is the first time in the last maybe 6-7 years that I'm really excited about the prospects they picked up, the young guys that are finally starting to come around. And, last couple of years, it's been tough to talk about because the young guys weren't ready to play, but now we're seeing, a handful of them ready to go. And it just makes things a lot brighter and a lot easier to talk about as well.
Absolutely. Again, we were speaking with Ken Kal, the radio play-by-play voice for the Detroit Red Wings. You can hear him tonight on 97.1 The Ticket calling the game. That puck is set to drop at, well, it's supposed to be a 7, but, all those pregame ceremonies, probably about 7:10 in reality. But, make sure you tune in and listen. So we'll be back on Monday with recapping both games. Scotty and I will be. Same time, same place. It's your team. Every day.